Let me get you more on this big developing story. Joining me from Tel Aviv is Nick Kolyohin, and Nick has been traveling very extensively, especially in the last 24 hours. Also, Anjana Sankar is a senior journalist with the National in Abu Dhabi, tracking these developments very closely. Nick, 24 hours later, what's the battle damage assessment? What's been the impact of the Iranian missile strike, sir?
So although the Iranians said that they targeted the bases of the Israeli army, actually I saw how Israelis all across Israel were running to the bomb shelters and how the rockets were targeting schools, buildings of regular citizens, streets of Israel, restaurants, and the shopping mall centers. So most of the rockets that I saw, the debris of them and the damage was in a civilian population. And by a lot of luck, one of the rockets didn't kill hundreds of children because it was the ceremony of the Rosh Hashanah, the new year of the Jewish people. And just 3 hours after, the ballistic rocket of Iran hit the school at Gadera, south to Tel Aviv, and it destroyed part of the school. And fortunately, there were no children there. And also, I saw about 100 houses that suffered from the blast of one of the rockets at the town of Hod Sharon, north to Tel Aviv. Also there were no casualties, but it is because Israel has a really strong air defense, the Iron Dome, and also other systems that intercepted most of the rockets, and the ones that hit the ground, most of them hit in open areas because the system can calculate which of the rockets they are shutting down and which not.
Both the US and Israel called the missile strike a failure. But was Iran actually, in your appreciation, targeting these bases, or was it sending a message that if it wants, it can target the Mossad headquarters or the air bases, or was it indeed a failure?
Thank you for having me. I don't think this time Iran was just sending a message. We can say that in April, when Iran had the first volley of attacks, that was sending a message because they warned Israel 72 hours before that there will be a strike in retaliation, and they did. So it was more like a spectacle playing out, and Israel had all the time to operate its air defense, and it was sending a message. But this time around, it was clearly Iran giving a message that they can strike deep into Israel, and so far the restraint that they have exercised, throughout the Israel's aggression that we have seen, taking out the head of
Ismail Haniyeh and Nasrallah.
Ismail Haniyeh and also Hezbollah chief. So this retaliation Iran is sending a message that we are ready to have a face-to-face encounter with Israel. So that was not a message.
So when two powerful countries face off, Iran on one side and both sworn enemies, one Iran, the other Israel, Nick, what is Israel's response expected to be? Will it target the oil infrastructure? Will it target the command and control structure or leadership in Iran? Or, as some argue, including your former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, once in a 50-year opportunity, go for the nuclear infrastructure. What is Israel likely to do?
Israel for many years, Israel sees that the nuclear bomb that Iran is striving to develop as an existential threat to the Jewish state. And this is the real threat to Israel. And that's why I believe if Israel will do something, if Israel will choose to strike Iran directly, it probably will be the nuclear facilities, because now Israel has some kind of international support, and now this is the time for them maybe to try and destroy the nuclear facilities of Iran, but it will not be so easy because some of them underground and they are well protected, and this target
and they're
is
so
not
spread
easy.
out across
But I believe if Israel will do
Iran,
something, this
it's
is
not
it.
in any one place. I mean, it's Isfahan and in several other parts of the country. But Anjana, in your appreciation, given that US and Israel are seen to be on the same page, will they be on the same page in case Israel were truly to target the nuclear infrastructure? Or will it bring actually a bigger barrage of missiles and hypersonic missiles that will really be extremely devastating for the region?
See, that is what exactly Iran has threatened, saying that if Israel retaliates, there will definitely be another barrage of attacks, which will be bigger than what we saw yesterday. But, you know, when it comes to the U.S. stand, from the very beginning of the war, though the U.S. Government officials, diplomats have consistently relayed the message that they are batting for a ceasefire, but one message is very clear from the U.S. side, that its support for Israel is ironclad. So I think Israel now directly under fire from Iran with this brazen attack. I think Israel, not just the US, but even the other allies in Europe will be definitely giving their ironclad support to Israel, and again reiterate the message that Israel has the right to self-defend.
Okay, but does that right to self-defense include taking out nuclear infrastructure? And Nick, if you were to look at the way the missile strikes happened yesterday, despite the Iron Dome, and you're saying that you have a brilliant missile defense shield, but despite the Iron Dome, despite the David Sling, despite Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 and the Patriot system, and the fighter jets, and US support, and US Navy destroyers, some of these hypersonic missiles and the ballistic missiles, they fell near the Tel Aviv base, they fell near the Mossad headquarters, and just about a couple of 100 feet from the Mossad headquarters. The next attack could be worse.
Of course, it could be worse, but Israeli army said that as much as they know, Iran doesn't have hypersonic missiles, and they definitely didn't shoot those ones. And I didn't
the
saw
Fatah one that they claimed to
any
have fired
evidence.
yesterday?
They say, according to the Israeli army, just ballistic missiles were fired at Israel, and it's really not good, but not hypersonic. And there's no evidence that one of the rockets hit next to the Mossad headquarters. I didn't saw any evidence of that. I saw that they hit a school and some buildings in Israel, and open field and civilian places. But Israeli military said that some of the missiles, they confirmed today actually to me, that some of the missiles they targeted and they hit some of the management buildings inside of Air Force bases of Israeli army, but there were no damage to jets as Iran climbing, and no damage to ammunition or some strategic facilities, just to the management buildings, and no casualties, no injuries of Israeli soldiers.
Okay. Anjana, apart from countries like perhaps Syria or Yemen or perhaps even Iraq, is there any country that's likely to stand with Iran if its infrastructure is targeted, whether it's the oil infrastructure, the command and control structure, the leadership, or the nuclear infrastructure, if it's targeted? Will any country stand with Iran? You know, in the region, what is the Russian role seen as?
See, that is the biggest fear.
Go on. Sorry, Nick, this was for Anjana.
Yeah, this is the biggest fear when we talk about total escalation of this war blowing out into a big regional war, and even the talk about whether we are on the brink of a World War III. Because if Israel retaliates against Iran, and all the possibilities that you just played out, we don't know. It is a wait and watch game. But you know, this is what everybody's fear is, whether the U.S. will be dragged into this war. U.S. has made it very clear that during this attack, they helped Israel in its air defense. But if there is a next volley of attack, next barrage of missiles coming into Israel, if the U.S. will get involved, Other militias in the region have already warned the US that not to get involved in this war. And if they do, US targets in the Middle East will be targeted by these militias. So if that Iran comes into picture, and then it's something that we have to wait and watch, whether countries like Russia, China, and other Iran allies, what will be their move. And that is the biggest fear. And that is why there is a huge diplomatic maneuver happening now to de-escalate and to take the country out of the brink of war.
Nick, every war has an aim. In this conflict, after the strike by Iran, what is Israel's end game? Is it a regime change in Iran? Is it to ensure that they're no longer a nuclear weapon threat that they could well be if their nuclear infrastructure is not targeted according to Israel? What's the end game? What's the aim?
Israel has one end game from the beginning, the establishment of the country in 48. It just wanted a safe place for the Jewish people after the Holocaust. But the Arab countries, the neighbors, they never accepted Israel as a state, and they, from the first day, tried to destroy Israel. Actually, back then, USSR and Stalin helped to Israel survive this war, and they gave them ammunition and weapons. And since then, the Arab countries constantly tried to destroy Israel. And after that, Palestinians, and after that, all those militias and terror organizations as Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran as well. And the Jewish people, Israel, just want to live in peace. And unfortunately, this cycle of violence is not ending. And the more blood you have, the more blood will be in the future. And there is a lot of hate, and from day to day, it's becoming worse and worse. And that's why I'm afraid
and
that
the road ahead is
conflict
clearly
will
not
continue for
easy.
many
Nick and
years.
Anjana for joining me here on this India Today special. Many thanks. News also coming in. Israel has lost 7 soldiers, including one young army captain in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon. As they moved in, there was a targeted attack, and 7 Israeli soldiers have been killed in action. So the road ahead for Israel, extremely, extremely dangerous. And we'll be tracking that story very closely.